something I see very often with service business owners. The business is working, is generating revenue, it may even be profitable, and yet when you look at that same business from a buyer's perspective, it doesn't sell or it sells poorly. The reason is simple but often misunderstood. Revenue is not value. What buyers purchase is not what the business does today. It's what the business can continue to do tomorrow without relying on the founder. Most conversations about growth focus on volume, performance, and visible results. Buyers look at something else. They look at what holds over time, what is repeatable, and what remains in place even when the key person steps away. To understand why so many businesses break down at this stage, you need to understand how buyers actually evaluate a company. And that perspective is very different from an operator's or broker's point of view. When buyers look at a business, they're not asking how fast is it growing. They're asking a different question. Where is the risk and how contained is it? Buyers don't buy upside first, they buy continuity. They want to know what happens the day after the acquisition closes. If revenue depends heavily on the founders, if sales only work because one person is involved, or if results can't be clearly explained or forecasted, that's not seen as potential. It's seen as risk, and risk is always priced into the deal. From a buyer's perspective, a business is evaluated on three things: the quality of its revenue, the structure behind that revenue, and how transferable the whole system really is. This is where the gap starts to appear between businesses that perform and businesses that are actually viable. And that gap explains why so many deals get discounted, restructured, or never close at all. This is where many businesses that appear healthy on the surface start to break down. Not because the founder isn't capable, not because the market isn't there, and not because the business isn't working, but because the business was never designed to operate without constant founder involvement. From a buyer's perspective, a few patterns come up again and again. Revenue concentrated in a small number of clients. Sales and growth that only work when the founder is directly involved. Revenue that fluctuate year to year or month to month without a clear explanation. System that exists in people's heads but not on paper. And performance that looks strong but can be clearly forecasted or defended. Individually, none of these issues seems fatal, but together they create uncertainty. And uncertainty is exactly what buyers try to eliminate. What founders often see as a flexibility or agility, buyers see as execution risk. And that's when a business that works operationally starts to fall apart during evaluation. At this point, it's important to be very clear about one thing. What I am about to mention are not projections, they are not promises, and they are not guarantees. They are patterns observed in real transactions. When buyers evaluate service businesses, valuation is not driven by optimism. It's driven by how predictable, explainable, and transferable the business actually is. Two businesses can generate similar revenue and trade at very different valuations. The difference is an effort, it is an ambition, it's structure. And once you understand that link, the gaps between businesses become very visible. When a service business is well structured, low risk and transferable, a few outcomes tend to show up consistently. Again, these are not targets or promises, they are patterns buyers recognize. First, valuation multiples. Businesses with predictable revenue, diversified acquisition channels, and clean reporting typically trade at higher multiples, often in the 4 to 6 times EBITDA range. Second, valuation uplift. Moving from a fragile founder-dependent structure to a buyer-grade one can materially increase enterprise value, sometimes by more than 100% without adding revenue. Third, timing. Exit readiness is not an overnight event. In most cases, 12 to 18 months is enough to stabilize revenue, quality, reduce execution risk, and reach buyer and lender grade standards. Fourth, the transaction process itself. Turnkey, well-governed businesses tend to move faster through diligence. There's less friction, fewer renegotiations, and fewer late-stage surprises. And finally, deal structure. Lower perceived risk often leads to cleaner offers, less reliance on earnouts, less performance-based holdback, and more certainty for the seller. These outcomes don't come from growth alone. They come from how that growth is built. The timing of this work matters more than most founders realize. What I see very often is this. The decision to prepare for an exit only happens once a sale becomes urgent. And by then, leverage is already gone. Buyers don't pay a premium for problems they are expected to fix. They discount risk, they restructure deals, or they walk away. The strongest position a founder can be in is optionality, being able to sell without needing to sell. That optionality is built before any process starts. It's built while the business is still operating normally, when there is time to stabilize, document, and strengthen what matters. This is why exit readiness isn't a transaction step, it's a strategic phase. This is the gap Exit 3D Studio was created to address. Not to sell a business and not to run a transaction, but to help founders close the distance between a business that performs operationally and one that holds up under buyer scrutiny. The approach is intentionally buyer-led. It's informed by how businesses are actually evaluated during diligence and not by how they are marketed. The focus is on revenue quality, structural risk, and transferability. Because when those elements are strong, growth compounds, negotiations change, and optionality increases. The goal isn't to prepare a business for sale tomorrow, it's to build something that should be sold cleanly whenever the timing is right. The first step in this process isn't selling anything, it's understanding how your business would actually be evaluated by buyers today. That's the purpose of the strategy call. It's a working session. We look at your revenue, your structure, and where risk shows up from a buyer's perspective. This is not a sales pitch, and it's not a demo. It's a buyer level evaluation to determine whether it makes sense to go further. If there is a strong fit, we'll outline what strengthening your evaluation should involve. And if there isn't, you live with clarity on why. If you want to understand how your business will be evaluated before buyers do, you can book a strategy call below.